Okay, given that context, I just want to do a quick snap poll. Do we think that BBC Three, or sorry, the BBC's decision to move BBC Three online is the right one? Answer yes, no, or if you're on the fence, somewhere in between. So, I mean, given the context you've just gone through there, I mean, the Trust said earlier this year that the decision was finely balanced.
Yes.
What do you think pushed them over the line? What did you do to get them there?
You know, to be honest with you, I'm like everybody in this room. We submit documents to the Trust. I don't have an ongoing dialogue with them. I haven't got, you know, underneath the skin of what they mean by finely balanced. From the documents and from what I read by the BBC Trust, I think what they have acknowledged is the direction of travel is moving in that way. I think, you know, for us as an organisation, for the BBC as an organisation, I think we've got to try and do things in different ways. I think we've got to try and reach audiences in different ways. You know, when I look at BBC 1, 2, 3 and 4 and the fact that they reach 70% of 16 to 34-year-olds on a weekly basis, the interesting part for me and the goal for me and the prize for me on BBC 3 is that 30% that we're not reaching. And I think when you see the direction of travel, when I read about, you know, consumption behaviour amongst young people in terms of the types of content they're consuming, where they're consuming it, how much, a little live TV they're watching. I ran CBBC for a while. I'm still struck by the fact that if you look at the top 10 any day, take out your phones now and look at the iPlayer programmes for last night, there will be 2 or 3 CBBC programmes in the top 10. Behaviour is changing and it's starting to change with younger audiences, and we have to be on that trajectory. We have to be ahead of that curve.
Is your CBBC experience quite central to why you got the job? Because you're not, you know, you're not a traditional digital commissioner, are you?
Well,
you have a background in traditional television.
My CBBC experience was invaluable in the sense of, you know, I was further away from that demographic than I am from the demographic now that I commission shows for. What I realised, and what I realised a lot in CBBC, is it's not about my taste, it's not about what I want, it's about really trying to get underneath the skin of your audience and really understand your audience, understand what types of content work for them. But I think probably why Danny asked me to take this on is, I think people forget it, I ran the CBBC website alongside the channel. The BBC has 10 digital products, and for 3 or 4 years, I can't remember how long I was at CBBC, I ran the website as well and ran it very successfully and grew audiences and unique users to it on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis.
Okay, so one of the Trust's conditions for the digital switch was that you have a gradual and well-managed transition.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through the timetable, your preferred timetable
for the
move online? When can audiences expect to see BBC Three as a digital-only proposition?
As a digital-only proposition, obviously, you know, depending on the outcome for the Trust, it's back in consultation at the moment. We're aiming for the middle of January. So I think what you can see and what you'll witness is a ramping up, and quite a significant ramping up, of activity around the long-form programming that we do now. So I think over autumn I've just brought in a guy, very, very talented, very creative young guy, Max Gogarty, who I'm working with, who's going to be commissioning, looking after all the daily content.
Max has come from Vice, is that right?
Max has come from Vice. We'll get to, I know, somewhere at stage in the conversation, exactly how it's going to work and what it's going to be. I spent last week recruiting for supervising content producers. We're getting in content producers, assistant producers. We'll start gearing up.
So you're surrounding yourself by digital experts?
We're surrounding ourselves by digital experts. But don't forget as well, we're surrounding ourselves by people who can tell brilliant stories. There's people in this room that we're going to continue working with. 80% of our budget on BBC Three will be spent on the long-form programmes, the things that we do today, the things that have made BBC Three what they are, and the things that we're incredibly proud of. That's what I'm going to continue commissioning.
You say mid-January. The Trust would perhaps maybe like to see a more gradual transition, wouldn't they? And you've suggested that if you have to keep the linear channel open longer, it might be too expensive. Are you hoping for some sort of middle ground?
I just said, you know, at the top of this, when I was talking about not only a 5-year flat licence fee funding, £150 million hole in our finances, I think we just cannot afford to keep the channel open for longer. That's, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest with you, if they come back and they say they would like us to do it for a while longer, but we have a transitional
Could that put the move in jeopardy, potentially, if they do that?
Put the move in what context?
So if the Trust turn around to you and say, we'd like the channel to remain open longer.
If it does, well then money will have to come out of somewhere. That's it's something for Danny to have a look at, and it's, you know, money will have to come from somewhere because content costs money. And the point that we're making about BBC Three is channels are very expensive things to run because, you know, every single slot needs a piece of content in it, and, you know, stuff that's, you know, repeats cost money. Everything in it costs money. It's a very expensive way of getting content to a young audience. So I think what we're trying to do is focus the type of content that we're making. There's a much sharper focus, I think you'll find now, with the proposals, the editorial proposals and the editorial pillars that we have for BBC Three going forward. But, you know, that will be a conversation that we're going to have in October. I can't talk about hypotheticals because, you know, I'd drive myself mad.
But you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing, is that right?
We will spend a lot of money on marketing.
Can you tell me how much?
No. To be honest with you, know, listen, I go into work every day, and I know a lot of people are obsessed about money and obsessed about all these things. I work with a marketing
But the BBC's talking about money. That's the background to this decision, isn't it?
But I don't get into the nitty-gritty of a marketing budget. I work with the marketing team. It would be a significant, what we've said in the proposal to the Trust, is a significant proportion of the BBC's off-air marketing budget will be spent on telling the BBC, telling the young audience where they can find content on BBC.
So where can we expect to see that? It's not very often you see BBC billboards, is it? Where will that campaign be focused?
I'm not sure billboards are the right way for us to go. We're working with a marketing agency at the moment. I'm having meetings with them alongside our marketing teams. They're coming up with really clever, really innovative ideas about how we can get content out to our audiences.
Is that online?
Online, how we can get content onto the places there. But also, I think one of the things, Jake, we have to acknowledge here is just think of what the BBC is. Think of what it is in terms of, and I think this is the bit that gives me confidence about BBC Three moving online and what we're doing online. What we are at the moment is an amazing portfolio of television channels and digital products. We have the channel with the highest reach of 16 to 34-year-olds in the UK, bar none, on BBC One. We've got the third highest visited website for 16 to 34-year-olds in the UK, behind only Facebook and YouTube. We will be doing activity on YouTube. So there's a lot of activity. We've got a lot on Radio 1. We have access to Radio 1. We'll be using Radio 1. So, you know, there's a lot of places already in the BBC where young audiences are. And it's my job to ensure that we leverage those in the most meaningful way.
Okay, let's take a step back a moment and assume that the move online is going to happen and the BBC Trust rubber stamps everything. Talk to me about the creative vision for BBC Three.
The creative vision for BBC Three. We've, as I said, when we were developing the proposals and deciding what BBC Three would be, we took a long, hard look at and spoke to the audience about the content on BBC Three and what we were doing with BBC Three at the moment, the types of shows that appeared there. And it came back very loud and very clear for them when we asked what they valued from BBC Three and what stuff really, really stood out for them on BBC Three. It was a scripted comedy, it was a talent-led entertainment, it was the serious factual programming, and it was drama. So what we decided to do is focus on those, so kind of anybody in the room will be able to work out what are the bits that goes there. It's, and I've said this many times, and they've been incredible shows. They've done an incredible job for BBC Three. Still very proud to have them on the channel, but I think as we move forward into this world, and we have to make tough choices, they're not going to be part of the mixes, is formatted factual shows like Don't Tell the Bride, Barely Legal Drivers, Snog, Marry, Avoid. We're not going to do panel shows on BBC Three. We won't do studio-based entertainment, and we won't do expensive acquisitions. So that, when you take out all those bits, that's kind of where the savings are coming from on BBC Three. And that allows us to focus on the areas that the audience has told us they value. And you know what? I think it allowed us to focus on the areas, I think, that make BBC Three feel like a really distinctive proposition, and also make BBC Three feel like a proposition that should be part of the BBC family in terms of what we can contribute to the creative economy, what we can contribute to creative people in the UK, what we can contribute in terms of bringing on new talent.
So you've created these two editorial pillars.
Yes.
Make me think and make me laugh. Let's tackle each of them in turn, shall we? Let's start with make me think.
Yeah.
What's the ambition there? What does that mean, make me think?
Make me think is, you know, we have, I'm not a man for anyone who knows me for these giant overarching mission statements, but I have a kind of a one. And I think the content on BBC Three should be able to provoke reaction from the audience and stimulate emotion from the audience. I think that's what it's about. I don't want to do things on BBC Three that people watch and it's just a bit meh and they kind of forget about it for an hour after they've seen it. I want to do stuff that kind of reveals them to a part of, you know, aspects of the world or lives or, you know, challenging situations that people are in, or uplifting situations that people are in that they wouldn't normally be experienced. They wouldn't normally be. They wouldn't normally see.
So you've got a clip of some examples of.
I've got a clip. This is
I mean, sometimes producers say to me that it all feels a little nebulous at the moment in terms of what your priorities are for next year and online only programs.
Yeah.
Can you give me...
Exactly what's in that showreel.
Yeah.
And exactly what's on our website. Do you know what? I don't understand, to be honest with you, where the nebulous feeling comes from. I speak to producers all the time. We're today going to announce 20-something films. I can't remember. I see Elliot sitting there. I work with Elliot on a weekly basis. We have commissioned tons of content. People are coming to us with really good ideas. I think watch the channel, the direction of channel. This online world, in terms of the long-form content that we're making, is not changing. The serious, intelligent documentaries that BBC Three do, that I don't think a lot of other people wouldn't do, that touch on themes there that are important to young people's lives. That's what we're doing. So, and to be honest, I don't know where the feeling of, we don't know. Don't worry about whether it's online or on telly or whatever. It's a brilliant story. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for brilliant stories, really well, beautifully made films.
So
that's
the idea comes first, and then
the idea
think about how it's packaged. Is that right?
Well, no, there's two different things. 80% of the budget will be spent on long-form content. So 80% of the budget will be shown on what you see in the reel there. And then we will do additional short-form content alongside that. It won't all be film. It'll be various different things. We could do an article, for instance, with a show like Life and Death Row. When we were talking to young audiences about that show and kind of, you know, they were telling us how much it meant to them and kind of, you know, that it made them question themselves. And you think of something like murder as a subject that should be a very black and white subject. And they talk about when they watched the film and emotionally how they felt and they were dragged from pillar to post. They talk about additional types of content they'd like to see us. And I was saying, well, what kind of things would you like? And they go, just an article about, you know, something about people around the world, young people in other places in the world around death row. So there'll be a range of content. But I think for people to think at the moment and think really hard about and where the big opportunities on BBC Three and where the gaps are on BBC Three, I think is we're getting quite a lot of single docs to try and think of single docs in a sense of how they could fit into part of a season. I think one of the things I'd like people to ask about today, I'm about to commission quite a compelling, noisy centerpiece of a season, and I'm kind of thinking of what kind of things could work alongside it. When I'm thinking of seasons, I'm trying to, if you look at what we did...
This is for next year, is it?
This is for next year. Yeah. This is for when we move, with trust permitting, when we move online. Well, if you look at what a gender season has allowed us to do, is the gender season has allowed us to explore a really wide range of territories. So within that, we can do body image, sexuality, sexism, violence, suicide, the biggest killer of young men in the UK. So to kind of conceive of seasons where we can touch a lot of areas. And the centrepiece that I'm thinking of for next year will facilitate a season that I'm trying to kind of, in my mind, I think, and it's kind of top line at the moment, but you guys are the brilliant creative people in the room here. You can come to me with ideas for this. It's about, I'm thinking of something about Britain out of control or excess. So within that, what could we do around, again, it could be things of body image, it could be things about sex, it could be films about health, it could be films about extremism. It could be films about anything that just is kind of, you know, plays to that sense. But I think look for at its heart an idea and think, why is this relevant to a young person? Why would young people kind of, why is this important? And I think, you know, Professor Green's important because it affects young people's lives. You know, we're doing a film, you know, coming up at the moment in the gender season. One of the centerpieces here is this rape, sex on trial. For a lot of young people in this country, the idea of blurred lines and kind of, you know, what's appropriate and when do you cross the boundary and so on and so forth. We're going to explore that in a really intelligent way for our audience and hopefully get them to understand where they stand from a legal and a moral perspective. So I think that's the type of stuff we're looking for.
I mean, we like to get into nuts and bolts for producers in the room. Usually we'd talk about slots, but obviously that's not going to be relevant next year. So do you have a set number of hours you're looking to commission in Factual?
I'm looking to spend around, and anyone who's in the room who's got a calculator and wants to do the maths, I haven't done the maths yet, I'm looking to spend around 10 million quid on serious factual programmes, on documentaries. What will that be? I don't know. If the average price is 150k, you're probably talking, well, I don't know.
How many hours does that
50,
equate to?
60 hours, something like that, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of films, lots of ideas. We need lots of ideas. We're hungry, really hungry.
And does the same apply for comedy?
In terms of,
I mean, it's a pretty even split. You've got £10 million for Factual and £10 million for
think of it in this way. The simplest way to think of it is there's £15 million spent on Make Me Think and £15 million spent on Make Me Laugh.
Okay.
And whether it's short form, and we can start having conversations and think about how we do short form and what kind of short form will work for us, you know, as we evolve, as Max gets his team together. There's a couple of things I've shared today about short form and direction of travel and things that
Let's definitely touch on short form, but what about comedy?
Comedy, again, there's 10 million quid. It's, you know, we're doing about, I don't know, 10 comedy series a year, so, you know, a lot of comedy series. Again, really hungry for ideas, lots of interesting stuff. You know, it's kind of, I'd love to be able to sit here today and say about all the things we're doing. Unfortunately, the reason I can't is I started this job, what did I start it, 8 months ago? I've been really commissioning really, really hard. There's a lot of comedies that are there just ready to go, but we just haven't got the contract signed or we haven't got talent booked yet. So I can't speak about them at the moment, but there's really,
so
really
you're commissioning hard, but you can't talk to us about it at the moment.
Because the contracts aren't signed. I can't announce something if people haven't put pen to paper.
Do you understand that there might be a bit of confusion or people feeling like they'd like more detail about what the sort of things you're going to be doing online? Because
the detail,
at the moment it's still quite hazy, isn't it?
It's not hazy at all. The detail about what we're doing online is exactly the same direction of travel in terms of the comedy shows that we're doing. Exactly the same direction of travel with factual programs. It's exactly what's in that show reel there. I've said, and I've said it many times, people in the room, I want them to bring me the next Life and Death Row and our War, big, impactful, factual series. So that is going to continue online. In the entertainment space, we've said what we're not doing is panel shows, but look at the stuff we've done in entertainment recently, and I think there's a lot to be proud of. Look at the stuff that we've got coming up. You know, I mentioned and announced Ramesh's new series a while ago. Today, I'm going to announce we're doing a series with Studio Lambert called The Fear, which is a really, really interesting idea, trying to find the best young horror directors in the UK. Really, really beautiful, really nice format. The prize at the end of it is we'll fund a 30-minute film for a new director to make this stuff. So what we're trying to do is just kind of trying to think in slightly different ways. I think look at something like, if people are looking for what's going to capture my imagination, the kind of ideas we go for, think of things like Murder and Successville. Like, just, you know, for me, I think a show that in terms of distinctiveness, in terms of creativity, in terms of mashing genres together and doing things in a very different way, that's the direction of travel for BBC Three. And you know, it's all there on our website. It's all there. We'll try and put that
let's get a sense of Make Me Laugh, shall we?
Yeah.
So quite a lot of traditional sitcoms there.
Yeah.
That will continue.
That will absolutely continue, yeah.
And one of the clips is People Just Do Nothing.
Oh, yes.
Which obviously has been a bit of a test for you. I mean, because you originally launched that comedy online.
On
what have you learnt from that, and how will you use those learnings when you
being launched on BBC online? Yeah, I think, you know, when we start kind of, you know, getting up and running, kind of, you know, full steam ahead on BBC Three, I think the kind of additional content that we can do around it, I think particularly in the second series, some of the stuff we did, the Dragon's Den, the Dragon's Den stuff, and the song, the music video that the guys came out with, and you see how that kind of, you know, played out for us on social was really, really impressive. I think, you know, that series is I think something that we really should hold up as a shining light for BBC Three in terms of the kind of a declaration for intent of what BBC Three wants to do. It was a load of young guys who were making their own comedy, and you know, you're playing it on YouTube, and they had these characters, they had a world in their own mind that they were kind of, you know, playing around with, and that feels really real. And, you know, obviously met Ash, worked with Ash. You know, first series came along. First series, you know, did well on iPlayer. It played on BBC Three, the TV channel after it played on iPlayer. Came onto the channel, did well there. But I think when I spoke to Ash, you could just see in it, there was something in it that was really special, I think, about the world they created. And I think the job that they've done with that in terms of the second series, of just broadening that world out a bit and opening that world out. And I kind of think when you strip away what it is about, and it's about Cruft FM and the kind of, you know, radio station, that thing is about that comedy is about friendship, it's about family, it's about, you know, loyalty, it's about all those kind of themes that work really good in that. So
it started on YouTube, didn't it?
That's what I said, yeah, they started on YouTube.
How are you monitoring? Are you monitoring YouTube? Is that going to form part of what you're
everything.
doing?
You know, I kind of a ferocious consumer of media. I kind of.
Are you looking for the next People Just Do Nothing on YouTube?
Not necessarily. We've got a brilliant comedy team in house, and you know, they're kind of talking with the comedy community all the time. And I think one of the things that we will do on BBC Three, and I think if you were going to characterise the comedy that we do on BBC Three and what it is, it's about new writers, it's about new performers, it's about new directors, and fundamentally, and I think the most important thing, it's a British story.
And the first series of People Just Do Nothing was released all in one go, wasn't it? On iPlayer.
Yeah.
Have you thought about how you're going to schedule content?
I never stop thinking about it. And, you know,
you used to be a scheduler, of course, David. So.
Exactly. You know, listen, I think what we're going to be doing on BBC...
Is it going to be a mixed model? Are you going to be releasing some things all in all?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's certain types of shows that make sense to be released as a box set, so to speak. I think that's, you know, there's certain shows that, you know, we've commissioned them, and I've commissioned them with the idea in mind that they will play on a weekly basis. You know, I think the model in this world and what we're going to do is it will be different. And I think, you know, Netflix have tried different things, and I think we'll learn. For instance, 13, the new drama that we're doing, Marnie Dickens drama, that's coming in March next year, which will be for new BBC Three, and we're doing interesting short form around that. What I really want to do with that drama, because there's a big cliffhanger at the end of every episode. It is literally, oh my God, what's happening next? And I'm hoping what we can do then, and kind of learn from maybe what the people who did Serial accomplished, and be able to start a kind of a dialogue with the audience and amongst the audience, where there's kind of a lot of chatter happening online, and we can kind of do stuff interesting with content between the episodes and release those.
So you're prepared to be led by the editorial of the content when you're making decisions about how you play it out.
Be led by the editorial, be led by opportunities. Don't forget all the content on BBC Three that we're going to do for BBC Three will also, the long form content will be on BBC One and Two. So look at last night. We just played The Boy Wants His Leg Cut Off, on a brilliant film of anybody who hasn't seen it on BBC One last night. Did 1.8 million. Did exactly the same young share. We've played it loads of times on BBC Three. Exactly the same young share as it did when we played it on BBC Three. So what I'll be looking out for is those opportunities of how we can work with BBC One and Two to maybe release a new piece of content off the back of that. So it's about kind of, there'll be a mixed economy, I believe.
Okay, and you've mentioned short form a number of times.
Yeah.
About 20% of your budget is going towards short form?
New forms.
New forms. Is that the way BBC is describing it now?
Well, it's not, because I think if I say short form, everybody would think I'm talking about short videos, short films.
Okay.
But it's
what
about
is new form?
It's any kind of content that we can make online. It could be anything that ranges for I kind of characterize it as, what I challenge the team to think of is, if they want to tell a particular story, what's the best way to tell the story, and what's the best format to tell the story in? Sometimes it may be an article. Sometimes it could be a quiz. Sometimes it could be a vote. Sometimes it could be just a simple GIF or a meme. Sometimes it'll be a really compelling short film. So there's going to be a real mix of content in there. And I think, we're going to work with partners across the BBC. We're going to work with the independent production community. And we're going to have a mix of forms in there. And I think that's the really exciting thing. I think the short form, new form, so you've got me doing it now, stuff that we're going to do, I think, what we're trying to do, and where it will be successful for it, is if people are compelled to share it, or they're compelled to share it with their friends, or compelled to pass it along. And that's the kind of content we're thinking of it all the time.
Does this content, though, make sense for independent producers to be producing? Because production companies are about making profit. This doesn't sound like a very profitable venture.
I think, there's production companies. I talk to, the guys at Channel 4. I talk to the guys at Vice. The tariffs we're talking about for that type of content are pretty much the same as what Vice and Channel 4 are doing. Well, for that, we're talking about 60 grand an hour. Okay. For short form content. But I think if I commission...
And just to go back, for your long form content, do you have tariffs for that?
Long form content, I've just commissioned Murder by My Father. To follow up from Murder by My Boyfriend. We're spending £500,000 on that. A lot of the documentaries you see in that show reel there, 150,000, depends on the film. One of the films that I've commissioned, it's a transsexual love story, is quite a bit less than that. So it depends. It depends on what the editorial is.
So you expect producers to come forward with ideas?
I'd expect people to come forward with ideas. So don't worry about tariffs at the moment. If we feel that something needs that level of money spent on it, and it's an idea we feel we really, really have to do, we'll spend the money on it.
Okay. Because at the heart of all of this, BBC Three has had its budget cut, hasn't it? I mean, it was £80 million, and now it's going to be near enough £30 million. Does that mean fewer opportunities?
No. Well, of course it means fewer opportunities. It means we're going to be commissioning fewer hours of original content. Yes, it does. But what we've done, and what I've laid out to do, is we're focusing on the types of content that we want to produce. And I've gone through them, It's a serious documentary, it's scripted comedy, it's talent-led factual, and it's drama. That's what we're going to commission on BBC Three. So I think it means fewer opportunities, I think, in terms of people doing long-form shows, but I think it means more opportunities in terms of people getting involved with us to do short-form things. I'm seeing, or new forms of content. I'm seeing the team that we're putting together at the moment. I'm seeing the producers that we're getting in. I'm seeing people from completely different backgrounds who I don't normally see and we don't normally work with in the BBC, who are bringing us, an opportunity to kind of tap into their unique experience of the world. I think it's going to bring, from a talent perspective, I think the stuff that we're doing in short form, to get a gig on a presenting an hour-long film for us on BBC Three, or presenting, the lead performer in a comedy or a drama for us, it's not something people do for the very first thing they do. I think we're going to be much more willing to give people who've just got a really curious mind and a really compelling story to tell a punt on doing a short film for us. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for talent on BBC Three going forward.
Okay. Talk to us about your team.
My team?
Yeah. Who are indies going to be pitching to?
For long-form content...
You've mentioned Max Goethe from...
Yeah, for
from
long-form content, it remains exactly the same as it does now. So I think in factual area, go and talk to, if it's current affairs, Fiona Campbell, Jan will be your first port of call. If in documentary, Elliot Reid is around for a while, who's done a lot of amazing stuff for BBC Three. And then Patrick Holland is taking over to run docs, I believe, from the beginning of next month. So Patrick will be the main point of contact as Jamie and coming in alongside him. So that's where we are in factual. In entertainment, Ed Sleeman, who is doing absolutely amazing work with us at the moment. Some really, really interesting stuff. The Fear is one of Ed's shows, and some other stuff that I will be announcing in coming days, in coming weeks, that's coming up. Really brilliant stuff. So Ed's the man to talk to for entertainment. And in comedy, it's Shane, Christian, and Chris.
How do you like to be pitched to in this
to?
new era?
Well,
do you like emails, top lines,
well, do you know what?
formal pitches?
If I could encourage people to, as I've asked many, many times, to go through BBC Pitch, because it helps us to manage it in a way that we have to adhere to timelines. I'm across everything that's happening. That would be wonderful. But if people have a burning idea, just send me an email, or send the commissioners an email with a paragraph. Like, if any of you have sent me emails, what basically happens is I'll forward it on to the relevant commissioners straight away, and it will be picked up on our next routine.
Okay. And I believe you have a little taste of what the new BBC Three might look like. Yeah, we've talked about it.
It's a very little taste.
Yeah. Should we just have a little look at that? And we can
the red dot on this is someone's thumb. So imagine a thumb. So this is, I'll talk you through it. On BBC Three, what we're building is, in terms of the platform, there's kind of three constituent areas to it. One is the daily drop, which is this, which will be a daily stream of content, release content that will make you laugh, make you think. There'll be a mix of content in here. Some of the content will be short form, new forms of content that's related to the long form programming that we do. Some of the content in here will be content that we do in conjunction with partners across the BBC. So I'm talking at the moment with BBC News, with sport, with trending, with the guys in R&R, various different areas across the BBC, to see how we can bring a BBC Three perspective and tone and personality to that content. Max and his team will be producing some content for this, and then the final piece of the jigsaw on the daily stuff will be the stuff that we do with indies, so the short form content that we commission from indies. The second element of the website, these are all working titles, by the way, at the moment, is an area where I felt it was really, and I think it's going to be a really powerful thing for BBC Three. And it's about, one of the kind of things we talked about is kind of, when we move online, it's not just simply about moving a television channel online. It's about being of the digital world, and it's about kind of, benefiting from the technology that you get there. So one of the ideas is about a best of area, and the best of area, in its very simple sense, will be an area where you can go to, and if you're interested in a piece of content that we've done on BBC Three, you can click on the tabs that we'll have underneath. Say, for instance, if you went in to watch Stacey Dooley's new film, and it's, I don't know, about drugs, or whatever else it's about. You click on once you've watched a film on Stacey, it will give you the themes that Stacey has done in the films, and you click on that, and that will pull together every piece of long form that's available on the platform at that time, every piece of short form content, every article we've done on it, all the social stuff we've done on it, will all come together and be pulled together. Okay. And the interesting thing about that area as well is an area where we can pull in and encourage audience participation with comments and tweets.
How are people going to find this? Because there's going to be challenges here. I have a quote here from BuzzFeed, actually, talking about the challenge of building an online platform. They say, "I'm concerned that BBC Three Online would not be as successful as the BBC might hope it might be, as the internet can be a very hard place to build a content platform and bring back viewers on a week-by-week basis." How are you going to tackle that?
Well, we're building a platform because I need a place that shows BBC Three in all its colours, and that shows the range and breadth that we do on BBC Three. I absolutely acknowledge...
You can build it, but will they come? How will they come?
This is what I'm going to explain. I absolutely acknowledge that the content that goes in there, all the content that's in the Daily Drop, is going to sit on the social platforms where those young audiences are. I've spoke to BuzzFeed. I've taken a lot of counsel from people who are doing really sterling jobs here with BuzzFeed. I've spoken to Vice, and I understand from all those people that 70 to 80% of all of their audiences are garnered from social media. That's the person clicks in situ on that site with that. That's the most exciting bit. This is my 30% argument, that the 16 to 34-year-olds that we don't reach in the BBC at the moment, they're not coming to television. They're consuming content in other places. This is fishing where the fish are. This allows us to go out and put our content into the areas where they are. Do you know what I hope? and I dearly hope, is that that content is so brilliant and so compelling, and that we brand it and get attribution for it in a way that's really compelling, that people might just think to themselves, oh my God, I must go and check out what BBC Three are doing today.
Okay, well,
so that's the way I approach it.
Let's stick with audiences a bit, because I mean, the BBC's been pretty upfront about the fact that you're going to take a hit on audiences, particularly 16 to 24s, which is BBC Three's key demographic. You know, Danny Kavanagh has said that in an ideal world, you wouldn't be doing this now. It would be 3 to 5 years' time. How are you going to tackle that challenge?
Number one is it's not an ideal world. We don't have the money. We've had to make hard choices. This is a choice, I think, that creatively and in terms of the changing technologies that are happening around us, I think is the wise thing to do. I think, you know, we may lose audiences, but as I said before, we've got amazing infrastructure. We've got a portfolio. You know, in terms of young audiences and what we're doing for young audiences, BBC Three isn't the only part of the BBC that's doing stuff that young audiences are consuming in massive numbers. And I'll just throw it out to the room here. Read into it what you will. And I bet people don't realise it. The first most popular piece of factual programming in the UK in the last 6 months is Bake Off. Okay. The second most popular for 16 to 34-year-olds. Second most popular piece. But
is that not because of the volume of the audience?
But the argument isn't about. The argument can't be about the volume. There's young people still watching it. They're choosing to watch it just because there's loads of other people around. They're not all watching it together, and they think I'm going to this big party because there's loads of people there. They say I want to watch this.
Would they go to a party if their parents were there, though?
But yes, loads of young people, they go to a party where their grandparents are. I think some of us might have a very weird idea about young people and how they behave. The second most, which tells me a lot, popular piece of content among 16 to 34-year-olds was BBC One's How to Eat Well for Less. It's about life. It's about how you live. It's about what people want to do. So, you know, we're not the only people who are making content for young people. I'm focusing exclusively on young people. I'm making content that's driven out of this is what's happening to 16 to 34-year-olds. That's my focus. But there are other areas. So I think the point I'm trying to make is we have parts of the BBC that can help us, you know, grow. And there's young people on those places, so we can use the real estate of the BBC. And then also, and I think people forget this, I worked on BBC Three in the early days of BBC Three. I was working on BBC One and I came on, it was about, I don't know, 6 months old, can't remember, when I was working with Stuart Murphy. Do you know what objective Stuart Murphy gave me in my early days, 6 months, when I was 6 months into BBC Three? All the slots that rate 0, make them rate something. I think people thought it landed fully formed and it was a channel that was fine. It's going to take its time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Technology's changing. Give us 3 or 4 or 5 years. Come back to us and talk to us then. And you know what? I'm confident with, look at those show reels. I'm confident with the creativity that's coming from the community, confident with the ideas that we want to get out in front of a young audience, that it's going to be successful.
And you've committed to showing BBC Three shows on BBC One and BBC Two.
Yeah.
How will that work? Are you going to have branded slots?
No. I listen, this is, but maybe it's my scheduling background coming into it. I think what we have to be is circumspect.
An integral part of those channels.
Getting the right shows into the right slots. There's no point in us putting them, you know, saying we're going to have a branded zone. I don't think, to your point about what BuzzFeed have said about the trouble of getting people to destinations, build it and they will come. I don't think a branded zone on BBC One would mean something to that audience. However, a show coming back off the back of a show that has the same sensibility or the same demographic and we can pick up on that flow will make sense.
So broadcast research is saying that the number of 16 to 24-year-old viewers watching Family Guy and Hair, which have both moved from BBC Three to BBC Two, those audiences, those young audiences, have halved for those shows. Does that underline the challenge you face?
No, I don't think it underlines the challenge. I think it underlines the fact, as I said before, Rome wasn't built in a day. I think, you know, if you think about it, let's take Family Guy as an example. Family Guy has run on BBC Three every single evening of the week for, gosh, it must be nearly, it just started after I'd left there, 7, 8, 9 years. That's where the audience know it is. There's been a consistency. Yeah, I think what we have to realise here is kind of, you know, just we have to persevere with things. Perseverance is a big thing. It's very hard to change behaviour. BBC Two, when they do stuff that young audiences know is there, they will come to BBC Two to watch, and young audiences will come. Look at the young audiences that Top Gear get. Look at the young audiences that Dragon 10 get. Look at the young audiences that Heroes did back in the day. I think we've got to persevere with these things. But let's look at, if we want to tell a positive story, and that's the research, Hair as well, I think it was reformatted for BBC Two. To be honest with you, I didn't see it go out. I can't comment on it. I don't know whether there was elements of it that audience didn't appreciate on BBC Two. I don't know the truth behind that. But let's look at the positive story and look at what's happening to our content when it's playing on BBC One. And, you know, by the way, just in that article as well, there's a couple of things that I would like to pick up on is the Russell Howard example that was given. I don't know why you're cutting it. I run a channel for 16 to 34-year-olds. And I think about 16 to 34-year-olds all the time. Russell Howard and 16 to 34-year-olds, the audience actually went up when it went to BBC Two. So more 16 to 34.
I thought it was always 16 to 24.
No, BBC Three is 16 to 34-year-olds.
That's changed recently.
It hasn't
very
changed.
recently.
BBC Three has always been 16 to 34-year-olds. It was 16 to 34-year-olds when I first worked with Stuart back in the day, and it's still that today. No shift. So 16 to 34 is what I think about, and those audiences have gone up. But just to kind of finish on this point, not to finish the session, but on this point, is look at what Reggie did when Reggie played on BBC One in terms of overall volume, 1.8 million at 22:35, and double the share of young people than we got on the origination on BBC Three. Look at The Boy Who Wants His Leg Cut Off, I mentioned earlier in this session last night, 1.8 million again, incredible piece of filmmaking, and the same young audience as we got on BBC Three, and we've played that film already on BBC Three about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So we've already got a lot of young audiences to it. They're still coming to it on One.
Okay. One of the shows that we've mentioned, Family Guy, has obviously been picked up by ITV2 now. Do you think that might be indicative of a bit of a trend? There's been some concerns that talent might not go to BBC Three as their first port of call now that it's moving online. And in fact, ITV2 boss Angela Jane said last year, or earlier this year, I think, part of me knows we will be the beneficiary of some really good ideas. That must be concerning.
It would concern me if I was experiencing it. I'm not experiencing it. I have people.
So the top talent in this industry are still coming to BBC Three first. Is that the case?
But there's something here I think that's really interesting, and I've worked in various different places, and I think when I worked in CBBC, I think there was a concern as well about us trying to get top talent there. We went out and we tried to get top talent to come to CBBC, and they came. BBC Three in the early days, when I worked on BBC Choice before it became BBC Three, and we couldn't get people, there was a kind of a resistance of people to come work. If you create an environment where people can do their best creative work, and you give them freedom to do their best creative work, they will come there. And I think, it's about, the question I would ask about BBC, ITV2, I don't know by the time when they've paid for Family Guy how big their budgets are going to be to commission original programmes for other people, because what I hear is it's a very, very expensive acquisition for them. So I kind of think, I'm confident that we can offer people creative opportunities on BBC Three. I'm also confident that we can offer them access to the third biggest website in the UK and the biggest channel for 16 to 34-year-olds in the UK. I've got people knocking down my doors to work for me. I'm not experiencing it.
Still.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
totally.
John Doday,
yeah,
that name.
Yeah.
Him and Jimmy Mulville have obviously been very vocal in their campaign.
I'm delighted.
But John has said to me,
yeah,
I'm not going to take my talent to BBC Three as a first port of call.
One
of the most powerful agents in television.
But that's John's prerogative. I can't force people. There's many, many other people who won't take their talent to places, but for many, many reasons. And that's his prerogative. And if he doesn't take his talent to us, we, as I say, I've got a lot of talent on BBC Three. I'm looking at the shows that I've commissioned that we know are for the online world. I'm looking at the quality of the talent, the quality of the performers, the quality of the writers, the quality of the directors. It's, I'm seeing that some of the stuff, the directors we've got coming up for some of our documentaries are absolutely A-list names. They want to work with us, and they've always wanted to work with BBC Three because we give them creative freedom, don't interfere with them, and allow them to do the best work of some of the best work of their careers.
Okay, and that includes some of the people on that letter that was signed by 700 people that Jimmy and John organised.
I don't.
Likes of Jack Weigel and things like that.
Well, Jack's been emailing me since, he sent me an email since about, bad education on BBC Three. I don't know what the question was asked about the people who signed the letter. Listen, Jake, honestly, I'm trying to say to people in the room today, I've got 30 million quid to spend on content for 16 to 34-year-olds. That's what I want to say. It's a lot of money. I don't think there's anybody else in the UK who's put aside a pot of £30 million that's entirely dedicated to content that's targeted 16 to 34. That's what I'm saying to people today. If people want to come and work with us, I'm experiencing that they do, because I'm getting good ideas and good talent coming. If they want to come and work with us, the doors are open. We need ideas.
Okay, and just quickly, one last point from Jimmy and John, which they've been vocal on since the BBC Trust gave a provisional yes to the decision. I mean, they've said that the BBC has not done enough to explore other options for BBC Three, and has therefore not acted in the best interests of licence fee payers. And that this decision, if it goes ahead, could be open to a judicial review, potentially. What would you say to that?
I would say, in terms of, you know, I don't know exactly where the challenge is coming from. To be honest with you, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know where the judicial review, where the rules are around and how you could prompt one of those. I think everything we've done on BBC Three and the decisions that have been behind it and the documentation that we gave to the Trust while they were deliberating, they were the people who made the decision to allow us provisionally to do this. Everything is in the public domain. Everything was shared with people. I think, you know, Danny has a lot of, and his team, his leadership team, have a lot of decisions to make about how and where the investment is best suited in the BBC. That's why he's employed. That's his role. I kind of think if the options that we didn't explore, I don't know what they're talking about. If the options that we didn't explore is that we didn't offer to sell the TV channel to them, we can't sell them a TV channel because it's not in our gift to sell the TV channel. We can't sell the spectrum, we don't own the programmes. Family Guy tells you that. At that stage when they're talking about buying BBC Three, Family Guy was bought by another broadcaster. You know, it's kind of, to be honest, I don't know what I have never had clarity on exactly what we were supposed to explore.
Okay, not for sale then.
Not for sale.
We're going to open up to questions from the room in a moment, but just finally from me.
Yeah.
How do you judge success for BBC Three? What are the criteria for success? For yourself, for the BBC?
For the BBC, we judge it by the work that we do. We judge it by the types of shows we make. We judge it by the intention behind the shows. We judge it by the purposefulness, is that even a word, of the shows? I kind of think, you know, when we see something like, you know, a film like Murder to My Boyfriend, kind of, you know, not only winning awards, but changing people's lives, and kind of hearing from police forces around the country that a film like that has genuinely saved the lives of people. When we make even a piece of short form content like the trans film that you saw in there, that somebody sends an email to the producer of it saying, my God, thank you for making this piece of content. It's just kind of opened my eyes. It's allowed me to be who I am. It's given me confidence to be who I am. It's saved my life. I think what we're trying to do on BBC Three is content, make stuff that has purpose, that's important.
Are you going to release ratings?
Beg your pardon?
Are you going to release ratings? Because that's one way that us journalists can hold you to account.
Do you know what? The people who have to hold me to account is the audience. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm employed to do. I make content for that audience. And if they watch it and they like it and they consume it, will we release audiences? Yeah, I think we will. We haven't sat down and discussed exactly how we're going to do it. But you know what? If you want to go on our Facebook or YouTube channel or any of those other platforms you're going to be on, you'll see pretty quickly whether content's working or not. Go on the BBC Free Speech website and you'll see that 4 million people watched the trans film in 2 days. Okay. So, you know, it's a lot of this stuff is in the public domain. You can see it all. And all the shows that play on BBC 1 and 2, you get the overnights. OK, let's go to the audience. I've just been told, I think, that our poll from earlier, whether BBC Three moving online is a good decision, I think 54% are saying no. OK. So finely balanced, as the Trust might say. Thank you to Damian, and thanks to our sponsor, who also happens to be my employer.